Hello, everybody. Welcome to Political Playback. And less than a month to go till Christmas. I hope you've got my Christmas present ready to go, Simon.
Well, I couldn't divulge those secrets, and also we have to work out whether you've been a good or a naughty boy according to Santa.
Yeah. Secret Santa or something like that. I like the one you used to have, the family thing where everybody has to give everybody a present. It's really stressful. And now a lot of families have gone to the Secret Santa where you just have to get one sort of generous present for one person. I don't know why they didn't come up with that idea about 30 years ago. Yeah.
The shops won't be terribly impressed with that. Although it looks like you've had a little bit of an injury, one of your eyes there. How did the other guy fare?
Oh, look, I'm more one-eyed than normal. No, look, I was walking down the road today and somebody mocked me about Liverpool getting another loss. They're having a bad season. And so, that was it. I lost my rag. No, had a little fight with the optometrist and the optometrist won and fixed some stuff. So, yeah, I should be back to normal very soon. But, yeah, all very exciting stuff that you get when you get to my age. You'll get to there eventually, Simon. Actually, speaking of retirement, there was an interesting little clip that I just wanted to run by you. So, Sir Bill English, unlike Alan Clark, Sir Bill English actually retired and just let us get on with it and doesn't whine and complain about everything and set up lobby groups to whine and complain about everything. But Bill English was actually on this 30 Minutes, I think it's Radio New Zealand thing, and he was asked about, is he enjoying retirement? I want to ask you the same question. This is Sir Bill's response.
But you don't miss politics? No, I don't. We run our own life. I'm in business with our children. I can support my wife as much as she needs because she's got a very busy medical practice, and I've got flexibility in my life, and I don't have to answer tough questions from journalists all the time, Guy.
Well, thanks for coming in and answer.
Well, there we go. Is that your sentiment as well, Simon, or are you pining to get back in?
I am very much echoing Sir Bill. Look, I have all the time in the world for him, actually, a remarkable man. But no, I'm like him. I find time is now my own. I can support my wife. And look, I get to be on the Family First team, so I'm enjoying that as well. Yeah, there we go. There's your Christmas
Well,
present.
we're enjoying it as well. Right, today we're going to talk about hate speech, social media bans, Inside Out, that radical group, REC. They've just appointed a new CEO, which will raise eyebrows, capital gains tax, human rights. And if we get a chance, we might just do a quick grading of the cabinet ministers, because you reminded me that it's 2 years to the day when the new cabinet was sworn in, the new government. So how have they done? But first story is, I get the impression that the media are playing gotcha. They're doing interviews with politicians. And look, in this particular bit, I'm going to defend both Luxon and I'm also going to defend Hipkins. And I won't often do that when they get to policy, but when I see media up to their mischief, I do want to step up. So the first one, I'm keen to get your response as to whether you think it is an issue. So Luxon, he's basically asked, look, if National's vote goes low, you're going to lose colleagues, which happens with every political party. When Labour last lost, they lost a whole lot of their MPs in their caucus. And he was asked, are you concerned about the fact that some of your colleagues on current polling are going to lose? Now, I think he was just sort of, in his defence, he was just sort of saying, well, no, I'm not worried about it because we're not going to lose polling. We've got 12 months and we're going to get our vote back up to what it is and maybe even higher. But he sort of blew them off with just a throwaway line. This is what he said. So this is just the audio.
You don't hold any concerns for those MPs who, on the current polling numbers, if an election was held today, would lose their jobs? You're not worried for them?
No. And so he's getting lambasted for that, and they're running it past every other caucus member and National and saying, well, that's shocking that Luxon would say that. Would you have been offended if you'd heard him say that leading into an election?
I don't know if I'd be offended, but I wouldn't have appreciated it, I have to say. So I'm sort of 50-50 on this one, Bob. At one level, I think it is a beat up, but this is what the media do. They will pick up on any slip up. But on the other hand, he could have answered this so much better. Look, let's be honest. There's already a disconnect or a feeling of disconnect between the Prime Minister and the wider caucus. And so saying things like that doesn't help. It makes them feel that he just doesn't care. Now, that wasn't his intention, as a throwaway line, but unfortunately it can be misread and misinterpreted. And you'd be better off saying, look, I fully back my colleagues. I'm looking forward to welcoming them back. We're going to do a hard campaign. There's a myriad of ways to answer rather than, no, I don't care. Or rather, that's how it could come across.
Do you get to the point, though, as a politician, where I know you can't afford to, but you just get sick and tired of the games, the juvenile questions that are coming at you? These kind of scenarios, everyone knows he's going to try and get the vote back up. Of course, he may lose colleagues if they lose. I mean, he could lose his own seat for all you know. And so you get all these dumb questions, and then you get, I noticed this was an image that is a particular picture that the media has picked. They're talking about, obviously Chris Bishop is the one who's the next in line as leader, apparently, according to the media, who are all talking to themselves and talking to their, keyboards. And so you've got this photo, and that photo's, that's trying to communicate something. Bishop's got the upper hand. Luxon's worried. So when you get that constantly, did you ever blow it, lose your cool, do a throwaway line like that?
No. I pride myself, which is probably a big failure, but I pride myself on restraint and calm. I never lose my cool. But I'm thinking, as you were talking, of one politician who did, which was Bob Jones. Remember, was it the 1980s?
Yes,
when
that's right.
That reporter flew in and he socked him. So don't get me wrong, I'm not the violent side, but I will say that for myself, and I'm sure for just about every politician, there's sometimes an internal voice which is wanting to answer a question from Mikey Sherman or a Tova O'Brien or whoever. You might want to say it one way, but you've always got to keep control as best you can, because actually, just like we're talking about here, the media will run with it. And I'm pleased you shared that photo. I shared it on Solid Ground as well this morning. It's got nothing to do with regional government. If you put it in a different context, but it's just all designed to make the PM look silly, others look stronger, and sort of keep stirring the idea of a coup.
You've never done a Trump and called a reporter piggy, which he did recently?
He called some. Did he? Oh, gosh.
Yeah, he was on Air Force One and he got sick of questions from a reporter, so he called a piggy. He seemed to get away with it. Everyone thought it was an unsuitable name, but it didn't seem as insulting as it possibly could have been. Anyway, look, you did you did a great segue into Tova O'Brien, because I want to now defend Chris Hipkins, just to show how evenly balanced I am, since I'm not one-eyed anymore. And last night I was forcing myself. I was taking one for the team, watching the news so that you don't have to. And Tova O'Brien was interviewing Chris Hipkins. Now, the idea that she's trying to get across is that Winston Peters has said he's not going to go with Labor while Chris Hipkins is the leader. So she was basically wanting to find out, okay, well, if Labor won the election, but they needed New Zealand First, would Chris Hipkins step down as leader just so New Zealand First would come on board? And it was just an inane line of questioning that went on and on and on and on. Let me just play a little bit of it.
We're certainly not in conversations with any other parties about sort of working relationships after the election. Our goal right at this point is to get Labor's vote as high as we can get it.
Okay, what if it gets to a place, and it's a very realistic place, where you have the numbers to form a coalition with New Zealand First and the Greens, but Peter says, nah, not under Hipkins. Do you stand aside and let someone else lead to enable Labor to form a government?
I think New Zealanders are sick of Winston Peters and David Seymour holding the country to ransom. And so my message to Kiwis is, if you don't want to leave them in that position after the next election, vote Labor.
Okay, now that's where it should have stopped. But it keeps on going.
So, hang on, so are you not willing to rule out letting Winston Peters choose the leader of the Labor Party?
The New Zealand public get to choose who should lead the next government. My goal is to make sure that Labor is in the best possible position to lead the next government. And if that is us, I will be the leader.
Okay, but he
Still going.
hasn't said that he won't work with Labor. He said that he won't work with you. So would you rule out stepping aside and allowing Winston Peters to effectively choose the leader of the Labor Party?
Winston Peters doesn't get to choose the leaders of other political parties. He may get to choose the leadership of New Zealand First because he really is the only MP in New Zealand First. But he doesn't get to choose the leadership of any other political party.
Okay,
should have stopped there. I mean, had 3 goes at it, still goes.
So you're ruling that out. You wouldn't step aside and let someone else step into the breach if it meant that Labor could go into government?
If New Zealanders vote for a Labor-led government under my leadership, that's what New Zealanders will have voted for. And so, no, I wouldn't step aside in those circumstances because I think that would be a betrayal of the people who voted for us.
But if it's the difference between Labor going into government or not, you wouldn't sacrifice your own self.
Okay, let's stop it there. It actually goes for another 50 seconds. And I was yelling at the TV by then, and my wife was saying, "What's your eye pressure?" It just was pretty painful. And Tova O'Brien obviously is looking for the gotcha moment that he says, yeah, I would step down as leader of the Labor, even though I won the election for Labor, just so that we can get Winnie on board and we can be government. I mean, that's a little bit like Luxon saying, well, I'm going to step down as leader if National wins and let the Greens appoint Chloe as Minister of Finance just so we can get them on our side. I mean, it's just a dumb scenario.
Yeah, it's inane. Look, it's very much what the Tovas of the world are good at doing, though. They will take a particular angle and just push and push and push. And you're right, Bob, because it's trying to get a gotcha moment where, and she was up against Hipkins, who's actually quite good at this stuff. He's, as you see from his replies, masterful. Very good replies. In fact, this is one of the small tensions between how Luxon's responding to things versus Hipkins. But he responded well. He didn't lose his cool, but it is a very silly, if not inane, line from Tova. But that's exactly what they're trying to do: is trip, in this case, Chris Hipkins up, get him to say, well, maybe I will. And then, of course, there's days of speculation around his leadership. It makes Winston look more powerful in this case. So it's a very mischievous question, but I just want to underline for people again, and they must see it all the time. There are journalists, and not just the Tovas, who will push, hoping that you'll make a slip up at some point.
Well, the media is certainly pushing the fact that Luxon needs to be rolled. I actually just had a look at the latest One News Varian poll, which, is sort of, I would argue, one of the more credible ones, but more that the most people would be aware of. They would see the results. And the latest one, which was actually their latest one, must be coming out probably this week, actually. So that's going to be really interesting. But you've actually got Luxon as the most preferred Prime Minister, and in the party vote, they were slightly ahead. Now, I know every poll's giving different decisions. I know that Labor has won a number of the polls, but at the end of the day, there's still a year to go, but the media are just, it's like being at the Waikato Stadium with the media banging their cowbells, and you just start to get sick of it, or at the Soccer World Cup in South Africa when everyone was using their Vuvuzela or whatever that thing was called, and it was just really annoying. But I did just see this little clip. It came up as a promo for the New Zealand Herald for journalism, and I thought it actually really scored a massive own goal. Have a watch.
I became a journalist to enact change that will ultimately benefit all of society.
If it's news you can trust, it's news worth knowing.
Yeah, apparently they want to enact change, have an effect on society. I actually thought journalists were there to report the news. But anyway, silly me.
Well, they've outed themselves on that. Can I just pick up on that quickly? Because that's just tells you just how broken the Fourth Estate is and how blind they are to themselves. Their job is not to change society. Their job is to reflect to society what's happening from various perspectives. So no, very, very frustrating to put it mildly. And by the way, with your polls, you've had some before about Chris Luxon. Even though he's not particularly popular, his, if you will, unpopularity is in a very narrow band. It's not going to deep lows and then to particular highs. It's actually been remarkably steady. And I was talking to some polling people yesterday, And yeah, his variance is very low compared to a lot of others. You look at someone like even Jacinda, big movements. He's relatively stable, but yep, they just want to keep blowing those vuvuzelas. Just want to get that word out, and create that narrative.
Yeah, I actually noticed that you say the word appreciate rather than appreciate, which is very British. Anyway, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, it just sounds very posh. Anyway, moving on. Look, this whole, I wonder whether this whole Regulatory Standards Act, I'm actually wondering how many people really understand it, are involved with it. It seems to have upset a sector, and they went hard on it, but most people have no idea what it's about. But basically, Winston Peters voted for it, and then they said, well, actually, we're going to campaign against it leading up to the next election. And so David Seymour said, oh, well, you're obviously going to go with Labor because Labor don't like the bill. Next minute, National come out and say, well, actually, they might repeal it as well. So what's going on here?
It's a real mess is what's going on here, and I don't think this is a particularly good look for the coalition government, and I think it's not a good look for Winston or now for National. Look, if I might just back up the horse very, very briefly, because this is a relatively dry, boring piece of law, but actually it is quite, I know, it is still quite significant, because basically it's asking that every minister and every chief executive explain to the Parliament, how this law is going to affect things like property rights, personal liberties, actually some of the most fundamental parts of how our democracy works, to explain that they've actually interrogated the evidence and what's the outline and costs. So that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to create a series of standards. So those in favour, like the ACT Party, are saying, look, these are basic common values and every law should be tested against them. The other side is just saying, well, it's just inserting particular political philosophies like individual liberty. It doesn't include the Treaty of Waitangi and so forth. But it does have a significant impact. And Winston's objection is that a board has been set up to review all the legislation. Now, they can't stop the Parliament acting, but Winston is saying, actually, who are these unelected people who are going to be telling us whether our laws are acceptable or not? So I can see his point. But National, this confuses me totally, and I've been talking to a number of people in the last 24 hours, political commentators like ourselves, Bob, as in other political commentators.
Talking to our own keyboards, yes.
That's right. No, I've been talking to quite a few. They're all very confused. Like, why would National do this? First and foremost, the Regulatory Standards Bill is very much in the National Party ambit. Private property rights, personal liberties, these are basics for a centre-right party. And secondly, it plays into a National Party that's just sort of wasting time. They backed the treaty principles bill to first reading, but then said, we'll vote it down. So they wasted hours and hours of Parliament's time and a lot of very angry Kiwis. And here they are again. Oh, yeah, we've wasted all this time supporting a bill through, which, we'll just throw it out in the next government if we can. It's like, that I don't think that's a good impression for people.
No. Okay. Look, breaking news. We just realised that you're not coming to us live from Wellington like you normally do. You're coming to us live from your place. So
look, with the magic, you're right. I will do, as we speak, the magic of tech. Boom.
Oh, look at that. That's going to be a lot better. Ken, who chops up our clips to make us go even more viral, he's going to be very pleased that you've finally come on board. So well done. Right. Now let's move on. And there was a very good roast on hate speech. So there's this thing called Elephant, which is on the New Zealand Herald. It's a new podcast. It involves some presenters that were with that, in my view, awful Sunday program, which was very biased on many of the controversial social issues. But anyway, they've started a podcast. It's called Elephant, and they try and get both sides of the debate. Anyway, our good friend Nathan Sauli from Pillar NZ, he was on against someone who is rabid for wanting hate speech laws because of hurty feelings, and we need to protect certain groups, and if you say that only women can get pregnant, then, the law should be thrown at you. And there was just, I listened to it. Actually, the worst part was that when I listened to it, they didn't have the speed up feature. So I couldn't listen to it at 2 times the speed or 3 times. That was the most annoying part of it, but it was annoying listening to it anyway. But I did find 90 seconds that it's all you need to hear the argument, how people for hate speech laws argue. And Nathan just completely exposes the argument and then destroys it. It's a lovely clip. Have a watch.
When Parker Posey came to New Zealand,
Posey
should
Parker.
she be allowed to have spoken?
That's a very interesting question.
Absolutely.
What do you say?
So I just want to...
No, what do you say?
I am also I believe in free speech. I just believe in 2 more carve-outs. I believe in a hate speech carve-out and a hate speech in that.
So should she be allowed to have spoken? So we could have understood where she was coming from?
I don't think she should have been allowed to, because she intrinsically says...
Let me explain.
No. She said to those 3% of people, you don't belong in this country. You are lesser citizens. That is what she says.
She's never said that. Well, what I'll explain is this.
Well, how do we know if she wasn't allowed to speak?
Well, because you've got a YouTube channel.
What I would say is Paul does not believe in free speech, but he believes in his speech. You can disagree with me. You can tell me, well, everything that I believe is a lie, that it's wrong. But freedom of speech guarantees me 4 things: the right to speak, the right not to speak. So I'm not compelled, I'm not obligated. The right to listen and the right not to listen, to access information or walk away from speech I disagree with. What Paul is saying here is that only speech that he agrees with or that he believes in should be allowed to happen, especially in the public square. Now, for all of human history, or I shouldn't say all of human history, for all of civilization, Western liberal democracy, we have valued debate and discussion. We have used our words from the time we stopped using stones and spears. Words have been the pathway forward.
And that paradigm no longer applies.
So Paul doesn't believe in freedom of speech. There, he said he doesn't.
No, the paradigm doesn't apply because Elon Musk controls the algorithm. He can surface.
Elon, what are you doing to us, Elon? Why are you harassing us
to the top?
Woo! It's the typical argument of the pro-hate speech group. It's a little bit like Jacinda when she said, well, I can't define hate speech, but when you see it, you'll know it. They just don't define it. It's just used as a weapon, isn't it?
I posted several years ago something to socials which said something like, if you say I believe in free speech, I believe in... God, I'm getting it all mixed up for a moment. There we go. I'm leaving my speech live on camera. If you say I believe in free speech, but you don't believe in free speech. And what you saw there from the person debating Nathan is very much an example of that. I'm all for free speech, but. And anytime someone puts but into that sentence, they don't believe in free speech. As they say, they want carve-outs. And it is very amorphous as a concept. Well, what is harm? Who is being harmed? Why are some groups to be protected and others not? But there's a constant push which we have to be vigilant about, because like that gentleman, other groups, I'd even argue our Human Rights Commission, they're always pushing to try and find ways to limit what you say. The conversion therapy law in New Zealand is a very good example of that. The Harmful Digital Communications Act, what the BSA is trying to do currently, the likes of the platform and other non-traditional media, anything they can do to limit it. But kudos to Nathan. That was a fantastic defense. And do you notice too, the guy he was debating, just trying to get emotional, another classic tactic. But yeah, as I say, if anyone comes up to you and says, I believe in free speech, but they clearly do not believe in free speech.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about free speech on social media and especially around age. Now, just interesting, just before we get into that, we are bringing in online gambling sites, which is, I think, a major concern. I mean, there was some talk that gambling profits would not go into local communities, which got everybody worried. There was some pushback on that the government changed. But also, there's concern about the fact that gambling ads are targeting teens. So basically, the social media companies know the vulnerable group, the young teens, and they're deliberately targeting them. And yet they're saying that in the bill that is coming through, they said the bill addresses risks currently faced by underage people who can access unregulated sites with no age verification or harm minimisation standards So basically, to secure a online gambling site, providers have to meet strict entry criteria and comply with safety requirements, including age verification. So help me out here, Simon. We can do age verification for gambling sites, but not for social media.
I think the counter argument that people are putting is that it's not about a particular type of site. It's just that it's a comprehensive ban or limiting of people under 16. So that would be the attempted argument here to go, look, well, we right to ban access to gambling sites, but what people like Family First are suggesting is a comprehensive ban on all social media, and that's therefore an affront to the rights of children. I suppose one of our counter arguments amongst many is actually children have the right to be, well, children, and to grow up without having to be exposed to the harms of social media. And I know I keep beating this drum, and I think it's so important for people to understand. We can very much identify the harm of violence that we do see on social media, the aggression, the bullying, the trolling, obviously the graphic content. But we also need to understand that just being on social media is harmful for young people. Again, the work of Jonathan Haidt and others is clear. Simply being online increases anxiety, depression, and so forth. So it's not simply the violent or pornographic content. It's much more than that.
Yeah, so there was that Pew Research out of the US, and I think the interesting thing about the Pew Research is that it actually asked young people what they thought. This was a quick summary.
Pew Research Center finds nearly half of teenagers say that social media has a mostly negative effect on their peers. That's a big jump in just 3 years, from 32 to 48%. Negative impact comes in a few forms, like the unrealistic expectations set by influencers, something especially difficult for young girls, with 1 in 4 saying it hurts their mental health and 1 in 5 their confidence. It's also the feedback, or lack of it, from followers. Ka Anderson co-authored the study, which polled over 1,300 teens and parents nationwide. The fatigue number is up to 45%. Similarly, 4 in 10 teens say it also negatively impacts their sleep and overall productivity.
So they also surveyed New Zealand kids as well. This was Auckland University, and they found that there was support for increasing the age. It was just under half. But interestingly, only 25% opposed it. So I just get the impression that there's a bit of buy-in from young people for understanding that they themselves need a little bit of help in terms of restrictions and safety. The other thing, just before you comment on this, Simon, is that Meta seems to already know, without needing digital ID of adults like you and me, who the young people are on social media. This is in Australia. This was this morning. Snapchat are already starting age verification, and they are doing it through facial age estimation, and that's through a third-party service, not the government, or through their connection to their Australian bank account, so how they pay for their phone apps. And then just one other, which I think is the biggest concern, is that there's a case going on in the US at the moment. They've done discovery, and they've found that Meta basically did a whole lot of research back in 2017 and then 2019, and they realized that their platform was addictive. It was having negative outcomes for teens, including addiction, sleep deprivation, anxiety, depression, and body image issues. In fact, they actually said that, basically we're selling a drug, and they buried it. They halted the study and never published the study. So this has been my argument from day one, is it's not actually about big government footprint over everybody. It's about holding big tech accountable to what they have done and the specific targeting that they have done, that they have known about. And it's time for them to back off and leave our kids alone.
I'd agree, but I'd add just one other element, which is providing tools to parents and to kids, because you're right, it's about holding big tech to account. The government really doesn't need to be overly involved if, and I want to stress that word, if you take the Australian model, it's putting all the onus and responsibility onto the big tech companies. It's not the government hoovering up people's data or verifying their age, or dare I say it, a digital ID. That is not what is being proposed. But we also need to tool up parents. They've been really clear they need help. And I have to say that Pew Research, I think, is fascinating, and here from New Zealand, because you'd intuitively think that the young ones would not know or care, or would say, no, don't take the technology away from me. The fact that so many are, even as children, because the child's mind doesn't weigh things up as I don't know what's the right word, as thoroughly as an adult's. The fact that they are saying they want help, I think, is exceptionally telling. So I'm actually really pleased you shared that research. I think it's really important to stress some of it is from New Zealand, which is even more important.
So, I mean, this is a good comment from Fourth Adam. Why should there be age verification for YouTube, which includes family first? The issue is really that at the end of the day, adults are not going to be told what they can and can't watch. This is about big tech, who already have data points on everybody and know the age of their clients. Basically, I mean, it's a little bit like the 15-year-old that keeps walking into the pub trying to buy beer, and the owner says, look, I already know you're under 18. You don't need to show me ID. I know you're under 18. Stop coming in and trying it. Come back in 3 years. Big tech have that ability to say, there is certain material which we are not going to target at you. We're going to control the porn, the messaging where there is obviously cyberbullying going on, the violence. I mean, for example, the ability, that horrific scene of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, kids were watching that left, right and centre. There was absolutely no safeguards in place. So, but big tech could have shut that down, but they didn't.
No, and well, they did eventually, but it took too much time. I suppose I'd answer Fourth Adam's question in two ways. One is, we put on these programs. They're actually quite safe for children, as you might expect of a group called Family First. But we're not doing these programs for children. It's mainly designed for adults. And, as part of that, if the cost of protecting young people means that they can't access YouTube and listen to political playback, then so be it. But the second point is they don't need to be on YouTube. Maybe I'll personalize it, but, I want my stepkids, granted they're adults now, but I want my stepkids to be outside and playing and board games and interacting with friends. I don't want them sitting on YouTube, no matter what the content is. And that just brings me back to what I said just a few moments ago. The harm is not simply that they're seeing pornography or violence or inappropriate material. It's the very fact that they're online. This almost non-relational engagement with others through a phone or a tablet. That's why we want kids off YouTube and Facebook and Snapchat and all of these things.
Yeah. Okay. Although what's happening in classrooms we should be concerned about, because has been announced the new CEO of Inside Out is transgender and drag queen. And really that's just another red flag to already add to a whole lot of red flags about Inside Out. And look, I have done a blog on it, which you're welcome to see on our website. But, some people may say, well, why get personal about this person? The problem is that they're the head of a government-funded agency which is going into schools, indoctrinating our kids with stuff that parents don't want anywhere near. I think, if you've got someone radical like that running an organisation and going into schools, we have every right to know about their background and their ideology. But it really just shows you just how radical Inside Out are, that they are so overt about this.
Oh, absolutely. But they are a highly radicalized group. And I actually think it is completely appropriate in these circumstances to critique them. As I say, it's an organization that particularly targets children. You have someone here that does have will be said, as an unusual background. I mean, if I read your blog correctly, didn't they used to work for Sports New Zealand or something as well? I mean, these have been quite
Rugby
senior,
New Zealand.
Rugby, oh God, even more confusing. And so, this is a very strange circumstance. And yeah, these are people via government funding going into schools and telling them messages that we don't think are very helpful. And I'd say the majority of parents don't think very helpful. I mean, there's something as simple, again, the trans debate, going up to young kids and saying, you're born in the wrong body. There's something wrong with you. We can help you by dosing you with chemicals and using scalpels. That is not the messages, subtly or otherwise, that we should be indulging. We should be just telling kids they're amazing as they are.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. No, working for New Zealand Rugby is, I think it was inclusion and safeguarding, although not safeguarding against concussion or dudes wanting to play in the girls' team. It's all about woke indoctrination and ramming down genders and sexualities of rugby players, apparently. Just before so anyway, you can watch that McBlog on our website. I will come back to you in a second, just to ask what you've been substacking about, Simon. But I did just want to play this as light relief because everybody's been sending this to me today. It's AI generated, so don't panic, but it's Woke Rugby.
Welcome to Woke Rugby NZ, where contact is optional, competition is harmful, and every try is worth the same, emotionally. All right, team. Today's scrum requires full, explicit verbal consent from everyone involved. No pressure, no assumptions.
Do we touch it all?
Only if you have a verbal approval from everyone in the scrum, plus a nod from your assigned mindfulness buddy. Coach, can I still tackle? No. Instead, express your disagreement via a polite nudge and a reflective compliment.
Let me explain the new card system. Yellow card, minor emotional infraction. Maybe you rolled your eyes too hard during a team huddle. Think carefully about your energy. Rainbow card equals microaggression toward teammates' emotional safety. Could be a dismissive nod or using the wrong pronoun. Red card equals serious violation, requires a reflective journal and a group apology circle before you may continue playing. Here at Woke Rugby New Zealand, the only thing getting smashed is toxic masculinity, and every try is a growth opportunity for the soul.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take your hat off to both the creativity AI, because you have to look closely because you actually figure that out. But there's been a few of those, woke airlines, woke universities. Some people have been having fun. Anyway, that was unadulterated advertising for my McBlog. So I better give you an advertising slot. What have you been writing about on Substack?
Oh, less interesting than your one. No, mine was just talking about how politicians pour cold water onto different issues. So I was just reflecting on those recent scandals with some of the senior police. For about a week, there was lots of comment and lots of tut-tutting, as I wrote, by ministers and, saying this is terrible. But now you don't hear anything. They're pouring cold water on things. I talk about a whole lot of other things that I saw while in Parliament. And I finish by talking about the Manawanui, that naval ship, which 1/6 of our fleet got sent to the bottom of the ocean, and literally cold water is on that. No one's been held accountable. So that's what that Substack's about.
Now, actually, just related to that Inside Out issue, though, you just did raise the flag about the fact that it's kind of indoctrination by stealth. It happens very subtly, and then next minute they appoint a trans drag queen as a CEO. And you were saying even in climate change and even, with our trade partners, what are you getting at there?
People are going, well, the typical Simon for a starter. No, what I'm saying is, and I'll try to best explain it, because I'd sent Bob some information about New Zealand's trade deals, that some of the more recent ones are now under question.
And look, I did read it, but then I nodded off.
Fell asleep. Yeah. The basic premise, so the context is like some of our trade agreements here in New Zealand have all these chapters on climate change and labour relations and all sorts of things. And as governments are trying to govern as they want, they get hampered because of these deals. And I was linking it to the likes of Inside Out and is it Rainbow Tick and so forth. These groups, these organizations, they get a foot in the door. And by doing that, they then actually have a lot of control over how organizations try to run. So using the likes of Rainbow Tick or Inside Out at schools, they begin to, in a sense, dictate what groups can and cannot do. So even, through our Woke Up campaign, banks, for example, are all just bending over backwards to try and keep the Rainbow Tick people happy rather than run a successful business. And I was just highlighting with our trade deals, for people to understand, trade deals these days aren't just simply, I'll import this and you'll export that. It's chapters and chapters dictating around progressive issues, what they deem as women's issues, rainbow issues, union issues, labour issues. And as I say, climate change. That was the point. Just watch out when you open the doors to these groups and chapters and trade deals and elsewhere.
Yep. Okay. Food Dogs Trucking says trouble is satire is becoming fact, and I think that's the problem with AI. It does satire, and everybody thinks, oh, that's actually truth. In fact, it happened over the weekend. The TV awards were on, and TVNZ won a number of awards which they publicised, and so I just shared a screenshot of it, and I said, TVNZ breaking news. TVNZ also won the award for Edit of the Year, obviously referring to the Trump coverage and BBC, etc. And some people were horrified, didn't quite get the joke, and were horrified that they would have been given that award and they didn't deserve that award. So sometimes you do have to make it really obvious these days, because it is a big hoax. Right. Another bit of a yawn topic, I suspect, but there's an interesting aspect to it. It's this whole capital gains tax. And Labor seem to think it's the policy to go into the election. But the problem for them is that a lot of Aucklanders don't like property gains tax, because a lot of Aucklanders own their own home. And then they did some polling and they said, well, how about if we do it on inflation adjusted? So it's not necessarily the increase in the value because you've got a great asset. You take away what would be a natural increase because of inflation. So that means even less capital gains tax to collect in to pay for these doctor visits that Labor have guaranteed. And then I just remember this poll from September where they asked about a capital gains tax. And you can see that big pointy bit out down the bottom. People, 71% of us oppose capital gains tax on the family home. But if they exclude the family home, people are a bit more open to it. It does seem like one of those issues that people never really understand, and only the politicians are excited about it. And do they actually listen to the public on this?
I don't think so, but it's the politics of envy, and that's ultimately what Labor's playing at. I don't think, without being uncharitable, that a lot of people fully understand what a capital gains tax is or how it could be deployed. Because it can be the family home, it may not be. It could be obviously just homes itself, or what about other assets that appreciate in value? Just use that appreciate word again for you. So, a lot of people don't understand it. And, you've just discussed the difference between nominal and real value. So a lot of people go, what? So really, if you pare it all back, this is classic left-wing policy. We want to tax you more. Just look at what they've done in the UK overnight with the new budget there, more and more taxes, and it's insatiable. They will not stop. So if you're one of these people listening going, oh no, I don't mind a CGT, a capital gains tax, okay, fine. There's going to be something else after that, and something else. They're just going to keep taxing and taxing and taxing. Yeah.
All right. Now the Human Rights Commission are showing their true flavours again, and when the puberty blockers were banned, they basically came out and said, well, it's a serious human rights infringement. The problem for the Human Rights Commission is, well, they've basically taken sides rather than acknowledging that there is debate in this issue. And the other thing is that they have told us in Official Information Act requests that they have not engaged with people who do want counselling for unwanted sexuality and gender issues, who want to live their faith, want to live their lives according to their personal beliefs, their conscience, their faith, whatever. And they don't want to talk to detransitioners like Issy and Zara, who we've profiled. So they just seem completely one-sided. I know that you and I don't have any time for the Human Rights Commission, but surely as a public body, a public service funded by you and me, they shouldn't be rushing out with statements that are one-sided and don't acknowledge that there is a scientific debate around this.
100% agree. Look, unfortunately, the Human Rights Commission as a whole is completely captured with increasing radicals in there. That's probably, telling people like babies eat cake. It's obvious.
I thought there was a couple of recent good appointments.
Look, in terms of the commissioners, I mean, I pretty won't surprise people. I think I mentioned, I know both Melissa Darby, I know Stephen Rainbow. They're both people I respect, but they are within have their views, but at the same time they're within a wider organisation which just has its. And I think people probably misunderstand the structure if they think that individual commissioners somehow dictate everything. They're just sort of part of this bigger system. But there is no impartiality or fairness from the Human Rights Commission. Look, with the puberty blockers, it's a debatable area. It's highly, highly contentious. You and I have our view. Family First has a very clear view on this, but we would admit there are counter views. And the Human Rights Commission does not. And, I think it's okay for us to say that we've actually written to the State Services Commission because amongst other things, organisations like the Human Rights Commission and those that sit on the boards of Crown entities like the Human Rights Commission are bound by codes of conduct to be impartial, to be fair, to be evidence-based. And they are breaching all three of those. And so it's breaking news here on Political Playback that Bob and I penned a letter today to Sir Brian Roche to say, actually, particular board members and the Human Rights Commission are in breach of these codes. And so what are you going to do about it?
Do we only have the Human Rights Commission basically because of UN pressure?
It probably is related. But it's also a case where, you could see why you needed a Human Rights Commission on the periphery at one point. What you and I would see as fundamental human rights. But once these are set up, they just grow. And they get exponentially bigger and bigger. So we've got now more commissioners, more staff, and more issues because they get very quickly captured, particularly by the progressive left.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the interesting things was that in that media release that I showed, there was 3 spokespeople in one media release. In fact, I thought next time we put out a media release, I might include all our staff giving a statement just to try and beat them. But, they had the spokesperson for rainbow rights, then they had the spokesperson for children's rights, and then they had the spokesperson for gender rights or something. And it was just a whole lot of grifting on the taxpayer dollar. How many staff is in the Human Rights Commission? Just what a waste of money. Anyway.
Too many. Well, it is. I mean, it's just an internal talk fest of their own views. That's the fundamental problem here. I mean, I'm not expecting, I'd love it, Bob, but I'm not expecting the Human Rights Commission to come out and say Family First and others are correct on puberty blockers. But I do expect for a Crown entity, something that is funded by the taxpayer and whose board members are bound by the Public Service Commission's rules, to actually acknowledge there is some evidence for what we're saying. In fact, there's a lot of evidence for what we're saying, and it's not a black and white issue, but they completely ignore that. And I would say not just ignore, they've taken that ball and they've run with it right out of the park to say that there's just no doubt that we're right. And so, they're in breach. They're basically in breach of the Service Commission's codes of conduct.
All right. 2 years ago to the day, the cabinet was appointed. Actually, it's funny. I went to the website of the government and I downloaded this photo, and then I had a look closely and I saw some cabinet ministers who are no longer there. So they haven't even updated their photo, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, I was just interested to hear from your viewpoint if you think there's been any standout cabinet ministers 2 years on. And maybe any absolute duds.
Yeah, it might take me too long to do the latter. In no particular order, I think you can actually give some credit to Luxon. He has held together this three-party coalition, and that's no small task. He's probably underperformed in other areas, but let's acknowledge that. I think Chris Bishop has been actually working exceptionally hard. Some big portfolios. I would acknowledge Simeon Brown as well. I think he's doing amazingly well. Credit to him. The one who's actually not in cabinet but needs a mention is Chris Penk. I mean, he's the building and construction. I think of all the ministers, he's actually someone producing good and understandable work and deserves a promotion. For a lot of the others, it's not really clear what they're doing exactly. I will say I am disappointed in Nicola Willis's performance as finance minister. We're meant to be a centre-right party, or National's meant to be a centre-right party, and spending more than Grant Robinson is just not acceptable.
Todd McClay on trade?
Neutral. I think I don't think he's done nothing particularly good or bad. Don't get me wrong. Engaging with the likes of India and stuff, these are positives, but a lot of that work was already underway. So I'm not trying to take away from his efforts, but it's not for me stand out.
Okay. I think Erica Stanford has done pretty well as well. I mean, you talk to non-left-wing radical teachers, and they all admit that actually getting back to the basics of the curriculum has been a good thing. I mean, the results from the maths curriculum has been phenomenal. So I think, and look, there has been action on RSC. It's not perfect. We gave it a B+, still work to do, but it would never have happened under Jan Tinetti from Labor. In fact, if Jan Tinetti had been the Minister of Education for the last 2 years, kids would be having to wear badges with their personal pronouns from Primer 1. So I think we've got to be grateful for small mercies. Shane Jones, where do you rate him? Because he is entertaining.
Oh, he is entertaining. Look, I must say it's remiss of me not to mention Eric's work. In fact, all this hoopla around the schools at the moment and its priorities is eclipsing actually the amazing news that, maths, the structured maths is actually making a huge difference for our kids, which is brilliant. Look, Shane is great. He's very much the entertainer. At times I sort of struggle to know exactly what he has achieved, but he is entertaining. You could possibly put Winston in that space as well, although probably it's not so much Winston as the cabinet minister. It's as the leader of New Zealand First has certainly pushed it and got a number of wins across the line. You've certainly in areas.
Where would you put him on Minister of Foreign Affairs though? Because I think he's done a pretty good job. I mean, remember who the last Minister of Foreign Affairs was? It was Nanaia Mahuta. So once again, small mercies.
Oh, look, Deb, Winston is very well respected overseas, and he's actually an excellent foreign minister. I suppose for me, I'm sort of used to him being good at what he does, that, it doesn't become sort of standout. I mean, look, there'll be other ministers that we can critique too. So there's like 24 of them. So we're only just touching the top. But again, another shout out for Chris Pink. I mean, again, if you look at what ministers are achieving and being actually well received, he's a cut above the rest. So I'm expecting Bob a reshuffle in January. And I think some of those in that photo will disappear, and I wouldn't be surprised the likes of Pink and a couple of others come in.
Okay, just one quick topic before we leave. Basically, there's a MP property rich list, and they want to know who owns what. And so apparently the richest one is a female National MP who's got a lot of farm property, so has done very well. To me, I'm just not quite sure what this has to do with anything. John Key had a lot of properties as well. I mean, they say that because you have properties, it's going to affect your vote. But if you're married, it's going to affect your vote. If you have kids, it's definitely going to affect your vote on some of these issues. If you believe that the unborn child is not a human being, it's going to affect your vote. Where do we draw the line on this?
Yeah, well, I think you sort of show the underlying absurdity. This is the politics of envy again, and the politics of mischief, because people can quickly understand, oh gosh, this person has a lot more property than I do. And because housing is an issue in New Zealand, it's very quick to go, well, of course this is just politicians protecting themselves. If they've got lots of property and wealth, they want to hoard it for themselves. That was not my experience in Parliament. I own property. But, I approached questions on behalf of my constituents and what we thought was best for the country. And I'd say that's for the majority, if not all the MPs there. And then I think you well illustrated, well, what else? I eat chocolate, so I can no longer, discuss health
sugar
issues.
Tax. You'll vote against the sugar tax because of your chocolate craving.
That's right. I mean, where do you draw the line? But that's why I say it's the politics of envy and mischief. It's that sort of topic which, very quickly people get it, and it's easy to then become effectively conspiratorial. Ooh, they own houses, therefore they're going to protect their assets and screw everyone else over. So,
Yeah, always interesting, though. You always find that centre-right parties are all in the top list, which is kind of interesting, as though they haven't just had jobs as academics at universities like, or come straight out of school, or fish and chip shops like certain left-wing politicians. Anyway, I'll stop there before I get in trouble. Right. That's it. We've covered our topics. Well done. We've got a couple of minutes to spare, so thank you very much, Simon. Have a great night, and we will be back next Thursday night with Political Playback, although I will have a guest next week, so watch out for that announcement. We're going to raise the IQ level of the room slightly, just slightly, Simon. But anyway, thank you for watching. Have a great night, and see you again.